you are imperfect, and that's okay. You get to be messy. You get to fuck up and be like, all right, okay, Nancy, you fucked up. Okay, let's figure out how to come back from that in a way that's intentional and caring, but without that holding me back as much.
Hola, hola. Welcome to Entre Tías y Amiguis, the podcast where we dive into the wild roller coaster ride of adulting. I'm your host, Adri Rodriguez, a queer Salvadorian native, a first-gen trailblazer, and licensed psychotherapist, here to share wisdom, stories, and real talk with my tías and amiguis to inspire and uplift our community. I want to remind you that while I am a licensed psychotherapist, this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Now let's dive into today's conversation and explore the journey of adulting together. Grab your cafecito, get comfy, and let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Entre Tías y Amiguis. One of my favorite things about the podcast is that my online friends are becoming my real life friends. And so here we are, Nancy. I've been following you for quite a few years now. And to have you here coming from Oakland, to do this recording in person means a lot. And so I'm really, really thankful to have you and excited. And I think our audience is going to get a lot from this conversation. So why don't you start by introducing yourself, your origin story to this point in time, and any identities that are relevant for the audience to keep in mind. And so take it away.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I've also been following you for way too long. And to be completely honest with you, I've been kind of lightweight stalking you a few years. And I was like, I really want to be connected to Adri. And it's an honor to be in this space. It's an honor to be invited and talk about the topic, today's topic, which is my story and how I weave it into the work that I do. Because this is really my passion, right? Is creating visibility, creating spaces where we get to tell our story without any filter. And I do that in my own personal work. So it's so exciting to be in a space where that's also happening. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I grew up in Oakland, but I am undocumented immigrant, which means that I migrated with my family many, many years ago. I was 12 when I came to the United States with my family. So that's been a part of my journey in becoming who I am, not only as a licensed clinician, but also just personally. I grew up in deep East Oakland. If you know, you know.
Best tacos.
The best tacos, but also a lot of sparsity, right? A lot of a very marginalized community. And while there's a lot of pain associated with that, I also weave it into my work. And I talk about what it means to be an undocumented woman out of deep East Oakland. So that's a little bit about who I am and how I got to be a licensed clinician. I am the founder of Healing Corazones psychotherapy. So we'll get to talk about that a little bit. My hope is that it creates visibility for other BIPOC women specifically, but BIPOC folks to really understand who they are and get to choose how to show up in this world. We talk all things, what it means to be a daughter, what it means to be just a human being, a professional in systems that weren't created for us. That is professionally some of what I do, but I also create healing circles and healing spaces, just like brunch, where we get to come together. As those have been specifically for Latina women. Some undocumented women really show up in those spaces to talk about what it means to show up in professional spaces and in our lives, often feeling like we have to hide parts of ourselves. And those spaces have been just about showing up, right? About getting what you need out of that space, but also giving other people your wisdom, kind of tapping into your voice and sharing that however you want to share it. So that's been another space for me professionally. And personally, I'm a plant mom. I know we have that. Yes, I'm a plant mom. Soy una tía querendona. I'm the tía that's like, I spoil my nieces and nephews because I know that son todo para mí, right? I see so much curiosity in them that I get to be a different part of me. When I'm with them, I get to tap into my inner niña and the creativity and the just like letting myself go. So that's such an important part of my story and who I am and how I show up.
And perfectly welcome you into the Tia space right now to share some wisdom, because even in just introduction, us hearing some parts, right? And this is why I start all the interviews and focus on naming some of those identities, because at a surface level, you see a Latina woman who's a therapist, right? The two of us. But immigration stories, completely different. The layers of the intersections of the challenges that we've experienced because of the difference in the immigration, right? The way that we've been able to access certain systems or kept away from certain systems because of those identities are very specific to you. And I think it is part of this work with Entre Tías y Amiguis is really naming that when we're comparing ourselves, when we're seeing other people shining or thriving or doing this, sometimes it can like feel, why am I not doing those things? And we're saying, hey, like your story is layered with your very unique threads. The wins and the challenges are also going to be tied into those. And so even with sharing, there are like so many parts that I'm already like really curious about. I was wondering if you could kind of share with us, how did you decide to become a psychologist? Did you have a psychologist when you were a kid? Did you watch one on TV? Like, what was your journey in choosing this path in your career?
I didn't have a psychologist, although I think that's part of the reason why I decided to become a psychologist, because mental health services weren't readily available in East Oakland, right? Healing is not necessarily a conversation. It's more so of like how you survive the streets, how you get to like graduating, hopefully high school, when the reality is that that's even something that people don't expect of you very much. Usually the expectation is that you won't really be able to make it. And sometimes in the area that I was in, it was more so of like, if you stay alive, then you made it. But it was a lot of different experiences. I can't tell you exactly kind of the point that got me to become a psychologist. It was, I feel like my life experiences kind of made me go into psychology. I always heard my sister talk about wanting to become a psychologist ever since she was a little girl. For some reason, I remember she told me that she had a psychologist who came to speak at her school, and she was like, oh my goodness, this is what I really want to do, right? Like in life. I remember like she was maybe 8-10 years old when she was talking about this. And in my mind, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I love the way that she lit up talking about it. But then once I actually started going through high school, all of those experiences that were really, really challenging, and I often felt alone. I often felt like I was wrong for experiencing a lot of the things that I was experiencing, for feeling confused, for feeling sad, for feeling all of these different things, and witnessing so much violence, right, in my community. I had so many friends who were killed, unfortunately. And I recall being part of those conversations. Right before graduating high school, I started working at a nonprofit organization within my community that was meant to uplift a lot of the youth who were at risk. The difficulty that I saw is that many of the people working in the community didn't feel like they fully understood the community. But I was there, and I, like my high achieving self, I was like, how do I get to be the manager? How do I get to be like all of these different things? And I started having conversation with stakeholders. I started having conversations with the mental health providers, because I was like, I really want to take advantage of this space. And in having those conversations, I often noticed that I felt unseen, that it was a conversation of, okay, how do we provide these services for the youth that are coming to our organization? Pero las conversaciones se quedaban ahí, right? It was more so of like, yes, we have this programming from say 9 to 7 p.m. But once our doors close, you're free to go, and buena suerte, right? And I was constantly aware of this. So that's also the process, right? I graduated, I went into college, and while being in college and noticing these experiences, I was like, okay, I need to understand something of psychology. I need to understand kind of sociology. I started taking classes to understand, how do we prevent this from happening, right? Like I'm noticing something happening in my community. I can't quite put words to it because nobody is helping me put words to it. And I know that I want to help. I don't know how, but I really want to show up. I started taking psychology classes in undergrad. And then somehow I was like, all right, it seems like this is the thing that I really want to get into, and I wanted to explore it a little bit more. So that's how I started graduate school too. It was an impulsive decision, to be quite honest with you, because I didn't feel like I had time to really slow down and think about, is this truly what I want? It was more so of like, you don't have time to fuck around. You don't have time to slow down. You just have to get the degree, whatever it is. After graduating college, I was like, all right, yes, let me get to the next thing that is going to help me support myself, that is going to help me support my family. And that's how I got into graduate school. So it was a little bit of like getting into the field, but also really having a deep understanding that I wanted to make a difference in my community. And I knew that psychology was a way to do that. I knew that it wasn't the only way, but I really wanted to have a space where I could show up and I could use my voice to make an impact and have someone that actually understood the community. You know, someone that can actually speak to us, and not just from this like removed lens, but really from within.
Well, when you're talking about the reason that I asked, right, did you have a psychologist? Did you see one on TV? Because I think for many of us, the journey to getting here is like this piece by piece, door that opens, door that you cross. And I know that I didn't slow down to think about, oh, is this what I want to be doing in my life? I had no concept about what this life of a therapist is. I knew that I wanted to help. I knew that there were circumstances in my life that had brought layers to my experience that I could see, like, I'm different than everybody else, but I don't understand why or how it's working. And as I, worked in community mental health at a bachelor's level, and I would see like, oh, these people that have master's degrees, they can do this extra thing. And then you become the manager, and then you become like the supervisor. Now it's just like, okay, like, I don't know what any of those that means, but I want it, because similarly, being able to be in a position where I understood the community. I used to run a Latino seniors group. Era uno de arts and crafts. Todos los viejitos llegaban a mañana y decían, ve al grupo porque la muchacha te ayuda, right? So they weren't even coming for like the arts and crafts. They would come back for the arts and crafts after. But usually the people would just come, there is somebody here that I can relate to, but that I also don't have to work so hard to explain what is going on with me. And then you help me bridge. And I think that's something that's really beautiful about so many of our stories getting to this field and doing this work, that is from seeing a need, from seeing ourselves as the link to be able to meet those needs, and then to be able to give back in so many ways. I agree. So it's really beautiful. The origin story of Doctora Rodriguez. I love it. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about your experience as an undocumented person, because that also seems to be something that you really, a lens that you really use as you're doing your work to make sure that there is visibility, that there is like removal of stigma. But what messages were you taught about visibility that you've had to dismantle or challenge because of your documentation status?
Yeah. Well, I think whether it was indirectly or very directly, one of the biggest messages was stay silent. And not only the calladita te ves más bonita, narrative that we often hear about, but it was more so of like, make sure that you make yourself invisible.
Not safe.
Yeah. Because visibility was dangerous, right? So it was more so, and I remember having a lot of conversations with my parents about, we don't share our status, right? Like, make sure that you like visibly don't look undocumented. I don't even know what that truly means, right? Like,
just really don't get in trouble, no te llames la atención, all the things that are to keep you safe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just make sure that if you come across an authority figure, you said yes sir, yes ma'am, and you follow everything that they're telling you. And it was interesting to see that my parents were really careful about teaching me, your voice matters. Make sure that you follow your dreams. Make sure that you follow what you really want. And at the same time, they were saying, pero no lo hagas muy fuerte, right? Because I know that they were carrying...
Squeeze in somehow, but do it by squeezing in.
Yes. Yeah. Like, no llames la atención. But yes, still show up and do the thing that you're expected to do. So that's one of the biggest things the messages that I received growing up, not only from my parents, but also from my community. The like comments that I would hear from the education systems that I was in is like, oh my goodness, you're so bright, Nancy. You have so much to say. But yet at the same time, no me preguntaban about my real story. It was more so like wanting to fill a vacant seat oftentimes, right? Whether it was at work, whether it was in school, it was more so like you have so much to say and like let's bring you into the table, but we're not really going to make room for you. We're not really going to ask you about your stories. We're have you here, but because we know you're really good at connecting with your community, but we're not going to ask you what is it that you bring to the table. So oftentimes it was this kind of double messaging of show up and be here, but also don't do it. Hold back. Right. So again, because visibility was so dangerous to me, I also got really good at like both being excellent in some ways, right? Like showing up and being perfect, but also in this very invisible way.
Show up, do it calladita. Show up, do it squeezing in.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think about potentially creating a confusing message around what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I do this? Like, how did you feel in those moments where you would have to face this dual message of show up, but also don't take space? Like, what was that like for you?
You know, oftentimes I feel like I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like showing up, even just like existing, was wrong, right? So that was the constant message that I was receiving because it was like, pero no mucho. Right. So it wasn't like enough. Even when I would be like, all right, like I have a question, like I was shaking, right, trying to figure out what my question was to like convey it to others. But constantly in my mind, I was questioning, is this going to come across as me challenging a system that I'm not supposed to be challenging? Is this going to come across as me being upset at something that I'm not trying to be upset at? Right? How is this going to be interpreted? So I think that's something that I've had to deal with, and I deal with it to this day, right? It's not like it's gone completely. I've done so much work to try and challenge it, show up in a different way, but I still notice the way that I question myself, right? The perfectionism that still shows up for me that I'm like, ooh, lo dije mal. I mispronounced that word. My accent is coming out a little too strongly right now. I need to tone it down somehow. Or I just made up a word because I do that all the time. I make up words both in English and Spanish because I think about it in English and then I try to translate it and it comes off completely different. Y me pasa igual en inglés. It's like being hyper aware of those things constantly. So that's the struggle that I've had to deal with for many years. It doesn't hold the same weight that it used to, but honestly, for a long time, it was exhausting to have to carry that. It was literally a weight that I had to like cada mañana notice like how am I gonna show up in these classrooms? How am I gonna show up in at work? How is it that I can ask this question? So it was a lot of overthinking, right? Like how can I ask this question without again challenging my supervisor too much? Because that may mean that I'm going to be targeted.
Yeah. Lose an opportunity. Be pushed away from an opportunity. And then the documented status, I imagine that probably, because I've heard messages about how we should just be putting our head down and be thankful and be grateful, right? And so it's like, here I am. I have this opportunity to be here in this space that I know somehow I don't belong in, or the messages are telling me I'm not supposed to be here. So I'm supposed to just say grateful, head down, calladita. But then that doesn't take away that you're still a human and a whole person that is having a variety of emotions that may be dealing with people that are difficult and having to like balance all that out as you're also going to school and growing your career and getting your licensing hours. My gosh.
I know. It was exhausting. It was so exhausting and it continues to be exhausting at times, right? Being the only one or feeling like I'm the only one experiencing that, right? That it is having to navigate, again, systems that weren't built for us, right? Systems that were actually actively upholding white supremacy, actively wanting to silence us, right? So it's a little bit of a, excuse my language,
no,
like
go for
a
it.
mind fuck. Constantly figuring out cómo lo digo, si lo puedo decir o no, like, is this going to bring too much attention to me? Because again, bringing attention to myself or my family members oftentimes means being kicked out, right? Literally unsafe. So it was for me like having to constantly navigate these feelings of que tan
For being our authentic selves, because it's not always safe to just walk in being your authentic self. Like I think that for me, that was a huge struggle too, in terms of, I know that this is not right. I know that this is not fair. I know that this needs to change. And I know that I want to say something, but I'm not, because I just need a job and I need a paycheck at the end of the day. And I just need to finish my hours and I just need to be here.
Yeah.
And that creates like a confusion inside. And I think for some people, it shows up in this imposter phenomenon, imposter syndrome that we talk about nowadays. Like, am I good enough? But it can be sometimes this variety of issues and complicated layers of your own story that may be perpetuating this feeling of like, I'm not good enough, I don't belong here. But yeah, that's what you've heard of your life. Of course, you're going to feel that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Come to build Healing Corazones. Like, how did you, your experiences, the work that you do, how have you packaged all of that to make an offering for the community and give back for other clinicians or other people that are in similar places as you, and then also addressing mental health? And tell us a story of Healing Corazones.
It was from being so tired of needing to filter myself. It came from a place of, one, I want to be able to show up authentically. And I know in my bones, like my ancestors are telling me I have something really important to say. También that I was like, I can't have a healing space, how I know healing to be, continuing to be in these oppressive systems. And not that, I'm exempt from them now, because that's not the reality. But I was craving a space where I would get to show up authentically and fully and create that for my clients as well. Right. Because I can only remember the amount of times that I wanted someone to speak up, for someone to say, I see you, your voice matters, right? You're not alone in this. And that's how I decided to create Healing Corazones psychotherapy, because I was like, if I continue to work for somebody else that gets to dictate how I show up in the room, how I describe my bio, who I get to work with, right? I'm not going to be able to do that authentically. And for me, Healing Corazones is holds such a big part of my corazon, right? Of wanting people to really feel the grief of being undocumented, for the folks that I do see who are undocumented, feel angry, feel all of the emotions that come from it, but also facilitate a space that allows for our joy to be seen, right? That our journey as like women of color, that our journey as undocumented humans, that our journey as, you name it, all the different things, doesn't fully dictate how we show up. That's a part of our journey. That's a big part that needs to be addressed and that needs to be seen, pero no lo es todo, right? So for me, creating Healing Corazones meant creating something that allowed for folks to feel fully seen, to have a space where they get to say whatever they have in their minds, and it's not going to be pathologized, right? For me, decolonizing therapy, it's a way of creating spaces for liberation. And I know that it's not the only way to do it. And unfortunately, it's not the only space that we need, right? Because psychology is problematic AF. But the reality is that we can also get to have healing in this different way.
What are the gifts that you have found for yourself? Because much of this work, right? I tell everybody, the best thing about being a therapist and doing this work is that you get to grow every day so much, because many times we're working with people who reflect our stories, or who feel like our moms, who feel like our aunties, who feel like our cousin, who feel like our little sisters, right? And so there's so much that we also gain. And I'm curious, as you have created this space of Healing Corazones, me voy a hacer la mesa que no me han dado. I'm going to create my own table and I'm going to sit at it. And now I can say whatever I need to say. I can serve whoever I want to serve. I'm going to do it my way. How has that empowered you to keep pushing forward, to chase your dreams, to be creative? Because part of this is systemic oppression keeps us from dreaming sometimes, because dreaming can be dangerous. If you dream too high, with these circumstances, you're going to be disappointed. It's not safe. Don't do it, right? So how has Healing Corazones helped you open up as a person?
Such a deep question. I think it's so it's many things, but honestly, it's allowed me to be vocal about things that I used to keep quiet. And I'm not necessarily just talking about literally using my voice. It's allowed me to dream. It's allowed me to really get in touch with what I need, right? Not from this question of like, what do you need, right? Like, no say, not a superficial way, but really what is going to help me thrive, not just survive, right? So Healing Corazones has been part of that, part of me getting in touch with what's going to help me be the best version of myself, to give space for others to do that as well. Knowing that at times I'm gonna have to pause and cry. Knowing that at times I'm just gonna be like, estoy hasta la madre de las cosas, because that's the reality of our world right now, right? And being angry and giving myself the opportunity to name those things. Actually, when I started my practice is when I started being very vocal about me being undocumented. So before that, I wouldn't talk about it, not in the professional space. I was able to talk about it with friends. I was able to surround myself with a community kind of personally who knew this part of my identity. But creating Healing Corazones for me was also a way of allowing myself to name that I undocumented. I have DACA, which I know that it also gives me a lot of privilege to be able to say this is part of my story, but it's given me that opportunity to really kind of open up and talk about it. I also noticed myself being more creative. I started facilitating support groups. I started facilitating these dinners that I was talking to, dinner kind of brunch. It's kind of changed every time. I started creating sort of like networking opportunities, but I wanted it to just be community, like creating community and building community. So every about 3 months right now, facilitate groups for us to come together and just either break bread together or do some sort of like fun activity where we just get to hang out and come together, and talk about these very same experiences that I'm talking about here, of what it means for us to own our voice, what it means for us to challenge systems that were created for us. And honestly, it's like a plática también, right? It's where we get to like just talk about everything that we've been holding. As I'm not a mother myself, but a lot of the women who end up showing up to these are also mothers, right? So we talk about our roles of what it must mean, what it means to show up as daughters, what it means to show up as tias, what it means to show up as mothers, what it means to show up as you name it. And that's another way that I've been able to kind of really hold, and say, puedo hacer esto. Because traditional therapy, it's you just stay, you just stay in the one-on-one, you just like see your individual clients and that's it, right? Community mental health has also allowed me to go into the community a little bit more, right? But it was still very much from this lens of you're doing the work one-on-one. So it's an interesting, I was doing a lot of literally work in the community. So I would go into home-based services, a lot of schools, a lot of you name it, libraries. I was everywhere. But the reality is that the work I was doing was still very much one-on-one. Having my own private practice that allows me to be like, sí, es una parte importante, and it doesn't have to be the only one. And so creating these spaces, I'm like, porque lo quiero, la verdad, more than anything. Maybe it's selfish, but I'm like, I want these kind of spaces. And I know that other people want them. That's been, me ha dejado soñar de una manera muy diferente, right? That I'm like, yeah, I get to try it. Y si no funciona, pues ya no funciona, and that's okay, right? So it's liberated me in a different way. Me ha dejado como abrir mis alas that I couldn't do before.
You talked about resistance and comunidad, and that you've built your practice on this idea of resisting the systems and building community. Inspired, how did you get to know that? Because most of us, right, we were trained as therapists, as psychologists, and like this one-on-one environment where you're sitting, where you are assessing, and even systems thinking is a huge gap in our education as as in the psychology field, right? So I know for me, like my growth in terms of system thinking happened way after grad school. It was not something that I learned there. So how did you come to realize that the work of healing is about joy, it's about dreaming, but it's also about resistance and about building community? How did you put that together?
Yeah. I think similarly for me, it happened sort of after graduate school or as I was going through graduate school, because I'm a very inquisitive person. I won't always tell you what my question is, but aquí adentro is like, I have 20 million questions. So as I was going through graduate school, there was this part of me that was like, wait a minute, there's this gap. Right. There's something else. I'm craving more. I don't see once I was able to graduate, I surrounded myself with people who had similar ways of viewing the world, right? Of seeing that these systems are very oppressive and that I don't want to continue to play a role into what professionalism looks like, into, right, like how we show up as women of color, as people of color, is already resistance, right? That talking about joy is resistant. For me, a lot of the conversations that I recall having, whether it was through grad school, but even after me being licensed and going into like my big girl job, was constantly hearing this conversations about like, this is what the community needs. They need this, they need that. And I was like, wait a minute, but I am part of the community. What are you talking about? So it was always like having this question of, again, we need more. There's so much more here that is not being tapped into. So that fueled my anger. It fueled my desire for more, right? So even after graduate school, I was so fortunate to again surround myself with people who had the same mentality of what we're doing no longer serves us, or maybe it never has, right? But we've been able to survive it. And I started reading a lot unrelated to psychology, if you will. Right. I started also reading a lot about liberation psychology. I started reading a lot about decolonizing therapy. Right. And just people who may not have the title of psychologists or, in the mental health field, but that have so much wisdom about our communities and how we thrive and how we resist. So I tapped into that. I tapped into el conocimiento que ya teníamos. Right. So for me, it was also like an unlearning of what psychology tries to tell you healing is.
Yes.
And it was more so of saying like, espérate, because my people have resisted, right?
And
survived for so long. And in that survival, I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of stories of people actually thriving as well. So how can I like start to tap into that a little bit more and hear them and know them? Because ahí están. Que no las digan es otra cosa, right? That they, or maybe not even que no las digan, but there's a system that systematically oppresses and erases all of it, right? Our histories have been erased fully. So it was this kind of internal knowing that I needed something else and that I wanted to show up differently and that I wanted to like, that for me was already resistance, and that I was like, pero no estoy deprimida todo el tiempo, right? I do use my voice. It's there. I just use it very strategically. So knowing that that's the case, I want to be able to tap into like me not having to be as strategic. Sure, that's still needed. And at the same time, not having to think about it so much, where I can just say it sin tener que pensármela tanto.
It makes me think of like making a little pit stop for our audience that might be listening and thinking about if you're like that baby therapist or like that graduate student, or you are already in the field and maybe you're experiencing this like imposter syndrome, or this like I don't belong, or this I have my voice inside of me. I know that I need to say something and I want to say something, but I can't, right? You're not alone. This is literally what the system is designed to do, to keep us quiet, to keep us behind the scenes, even if we are the ones that actually know how to serve the community best, how to show up for community best, what we needed as consumers of many of these services, even, right? But because of this quietness, you may be in a space where it doesn't feel safe to be able to be you. And that is a natural and normal sort of process, because I think it is important to also recognize that being in a place where we can say, fuck the system, right? Keeping it real, it requires a level of privilege, a huge level of privilege where you can have roof over your head, food on your table, and then be able to speak up, right? So if you are maybe beating yourself or you're feeling kind of having a harsh sort of self-talk that like, I should have stood up for myself, or I should have said the right thing, there's very, very likely a lot of layers here of what you're not speaking up yet. But notice, because what I am hearing in your story is that you known this, right? This ancestral sacred knowledge is with us, it's here, but the layers of what we hear and systemic oppression just quiets down that voice that comes really naturally. And so if you already are hearing that voice, it's there. Just maybe right now is not the time just yet, but don't put it away because it's not the time yet. Listen to it and try to figure it out poquito a poquito. Like, how do you give more opportunities to yourself to become this and to allow the voice to exist fully. But that's what I'm hearing from your story, that this knowing you've had it. You've had it and you've known that the resistance of taking care of ourselves and the resistance of being together, talking about the things that they don't want us to talk about is how the work is also done, aside from the one-on-one.
Absolutely. And I think you're bringing up such an excellent point that, you know, it does come with privilege. Me speaking about being undocumented, again, has also been a big part of even having DACA, right? I know a lot of people who don't have that, and even folks who have DACA, right? I have a tremendous amount of privilege even by being a clinical psychologist, right? By being able to say doctora, whether people believe it or not, that's a whole other thing. But the reality is that I get to use those titles to name things that I used to keep quiet, right? To name things that I'm like, ¿sabes qué? Know that my credibility is still going to be questioned, but I'm still going to push that boundary. And it's from a tremendous amount of privilege. It's also from listening to that voice and learning how to uplift it. So, like, doing that where I am right now has been, it feels like decades of work, right? And no nomás mías, of the people before me, right? That it's me saying the things that I'm saying right now. It's not just like me having come to this conclusion in this moment and being like, I'm going to be brave and talk about them. It's really that it's years of work. And there's still so much more that I have to undo. And there's so much more. And I'm excited to see how 50-year-old Nancy is going to feel. 60-year-old. Espero que llegamos a esa edad hasta más excited. No me asusta el ponerme viejita. Just like, I'm so excited to see how much more I'm able to do. Because I also hope that other women get to do that. That other people get to do that, right? People who are marginalized, that we get to choose how to show up. That's such a big part for me. Now, cuando me quedo callada, it's because I want to. And sometimes it is because I'm assessing my safety in the room and I'm saying, yeah, exactly. Yes. It's like I'm really choosing to stay silent because I know that that will keep me safe. And at the same time, it feels more intentional than it was because it was never fully intentional, if you will. Like, it was just what I had to do to survive.
Just taking a pause to take it all in, because this is not something that happens overnight. Also, what you're talking about, with the things that I wish when I was barely starting this work back in the day, right, to be able to have this wisdom that you're sharing right now. What a gift that you are giving to the community that you're working in, the clients that you're working in, and to our audience by being our guest, because I don't think that your story is unique in the sense that like nobody else is going through it. But I think a lot of times we feel so isolated that we're the only ones going through this. But you're naming so many barriers and so many obstacles and so many things that are just really real challenges that we're going to be facing on the daily. And so when that idea of the strategy too, I think that it can sound like really cool to be like, I'm just going to like fuck it all, whatever. Yeah, but like, what is this still in your best interest? Because part of the resistance is also to keep ourselves safe, to keep ourselves well, because part of the job of the system is to keep us down, to remove us from the opportunity. So some of that strategy also is necessary. So, you know, from the same perspective of like, if you're not feeling yet that you can just like come at your boss or come at your supervisor and to say like, name that hard thing, even though like you're feeling it, it may be because there is like all this layers that are getting in the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting in the way. What is the work that you are helping your clients dismantle as you've learned, as you've gone through this journey, as you're walking maybe just a couple of steps ahead of some of the clients that you work, the patients that you're working with, what is the work that you're dismantling right now? What are the systems that you're naming? What are the things that you're helping people see from your experience and from the things that you have learned about?
There's so much, but one of the biggest things that comes to mind is patriarchy, right? And white supremacy. And the things that tell us to stay small, the things that tell us the messages that we receive, whether again directly or indirectly, right? But the messages that we receive about don't listen to yourself. That's such a big thing that keeps coming up for a lot of the clients that I see, is that they haven't learned what their needs are, right? They haven't learned who they are as people. Oftentimes it's been like, yeah, I mean, I went to school because I had to, right? Or I'm working 3 jobs because I have to. And part of the work that we've been doing is, what are the systems? So, like patriarchy, right? Some of those things that are upholding your oppression, that are telling you you have to be the perfect daughter. So you have to be obedient, right? And self-sacrificing, and never forget others, right? Siempre todos a costo tuyo. And that's one of the big things that we keep talking about, is how do we also talk about what's harmful within our communities, talk about machismo, right? Which machismo exists everywhere, not just in the Latino community. It's not a Latino issue, but how do we also think about how to take care of others and show up for your community, but in a way that's not self-sacrificing. So thinking about showing up in these spaces, really kind of redefining what it means to be safe, what it means to be vocal, what it means to challenge some of it. Because what I may have an idea of what it means to challenge the system might look very different for you, Adri, right? Might look very different for the person that I have in front of me. And for me, it's been supporting folks to be able to find that voice for themselves, being able to find that parameter, right? That says, this is truly how I want to show up. And noticing that they might sometimes again choose to be like, you know what, I'm just going to calentar las tortillas porque I have to do it. And I'm just going to do that because today I don't have it in me to challenge this, or it doesn't feel safe to challenge this today. And at the same time, know that within themselves and honor it and name it for themselves, that's already so powerful. That talking about it and putting words to cómo se sintió cuando tuviste que hacer eso, that already for me is a dismantling of a system that tells you don't listen to your body.
Just be an autopilot, just keep going, don't question it. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And for a lot of the women that I work with that are telling me, Nancy, I have this symptom, right? Even through like my menstrual cycle is bringing up this symptom to me. I went to the doctor and they told me it was normal. And I was like, they're telling you that pain is normal? And those are some of the very same messages that I've received all of my life, right? And oftentimes kind of slowing down with them and saying, what is it though? Right. How can we listen to that pain? What is it trying to communicate to you?
I find in my work, from the lens of generational healing, right, that when we talk about things like machismo, when we talk about marianismo, when we talk about familismo, family first, others first, be meek, be quiet, all of these messages, right? When I find that when I teach my clients for the first time, sometimes like, no, like what's happening to you is designed this way. And what's happening to you, this experience of no querer calentar las tortillas, like there is something in there that is speaking to you because this is like the legacy of the systems all the way to colonization, right? Like all the way far back to the historical trauma that our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents have experienced. And so when I help people name that for the first time, I find that people can share that accountability, because a lot of the times part of the, why do I keep doing the tortillas is because, porque así soy, es porque mi mamá me dijo, right? And everything. And so naming the systems of oppression, I think can be really powerful in terms of sharing the accountability of why maybe your life looks like the way that you do, right? You belong here. You're undocumented because a country, because a set of laws, because a thing, but that doesn't take away your belonging. It doesn't take away the historical trauma that got us to this place of division, of separation, of inhumane treatment of people, right? And so I think it's really important for those who are listening to be able to also inform themselves and empower themselves with the language that holds systems accountable, because not every distress that you feel inside is your fault or on you, or like the shame spiral, beating myself because I didn't do this thing. And it's like, whoa, pause. That is Marianismo showing up right now. That is the patriarchy showing up. Oh, you know, that's white supremacy coming in when your boss is treating you this way, or when your doctor is saying no. We know that the medical system disregards the pain of women of color, right? And that type of language or that type of understanding can be so powerful, because then it removes the pressure that I'm the only one that needs to fix this, or that I'm the only one at fault. And this goes back to the comunidad, right? When we are naming these things together, when we're saying, oh, you two are going through that, tú también, yeah, yo también, right? Like all of that empowers us. And my hope is that it also lifts up that weight that you have to do it all on your own, or that you have to figure it out, or that this is somehow your fault.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's something to, like, when you name those things, it empowers you to do something different with it. And even if you know that you can fully disrupt the full system, it does allow you to make an intentional decision to say, this is not a pathology, right? This very same symptom that I'm experiencing está siendo causado por el sistema que está poniendo esto, right? Like the significant fear that I hear a lot of my clients that I experience on a daily basis right now, I remind them, this is not just anxiety disorder because like something is wrong with your brain and this is the way that your brain is processing information. This is like your nervous system is wanting to keep you safe from a very real threat. So it's not just a pathology, like an individual pathology. It's not something that you caused and that we need to fix within you. So psychology for me and mental health, like these spaces are not just about saying like, let me teach you the coping skills so that you can figure out how to manage this anxiety better. It's more so of let's figure out what you truly need. And in knowing that this is being done on purpose, how can we also make space for you to not just internalize it and say, this is something about me, this is something about the system. So in that, when do you get to say, I am cansada today and I'm going to turn off whatever technology is coming at me that's increasing this fear? Right? Or that it's like you can cry it out, no te va a pasar nada. That you can cry y no quiere decir tampoco que you're going to fix anything by it, but it's okay to not want to fix anything. Yeah. And is it on you to fix it? Más probable es que no. Right? But by doing this, it gives us the power to come back to como lo estoy sintiendo is really how I should be feeling it. This makes sense.
And we need therapists and psychologists that are willing to name this for clients. And there are also, you know, I didn't learn about liberation psychology in grad school, right? Like that has been part of like the learning through community, through colleagues, through researching, right? Because I don't remember the specific verbatim quote from Ignacio Martin Baro, but he talks about that we as therapists, as psychologists, as people in this field, our job is not to get people acquainted with the system to survive it. Yeah. You know, we cannot just be teaching you tools just so that you can, well, I'm anxious today because I saw the news and I saw that there was a raid, and like, take a deep breath. You're going to be fine. The reality is that your fear and your anxiety is so true. And we as therapists have to be able to say to people, what you're feeling is not made up. Yeah. And that anxiety that you're carrying every day, that feeling of uneasiness that you're carrying every day, it has a reasonable and a valid and a systemic basis that is activating you. And if what we're doing as therapists or psychologists, as helpers, is just like, just do mindfulness when you feel afraid that ICE is coming, right? Yeah. That is not going to work. No. And so we have a responsibility too, as helpers, healers, providers, as companions in the journey, because we're talking about that many times we're companions in the same journey, parallel journey with the people that we're working with. But the naming of what's happening, as I hear your story, how important and how grateful I am that you are so courageously taking the stage and helping people say, hey, like me too. Yeah. And we're empowered by doing the work, but also we're going to nap a lot because life sucks
Right.
and the world sucks and the world's burning.
Yeah.
And, you know, that depression is not flavored just like something like mentally that's happening. Like you're talking about the pathology. There's nothing wrong with your brain that you're feeling on this down way that the system is perpetuating harm right now is more than a valid reason to feel depressed and to feel anxious and to feel flared up from symptoms of PTSD, things, you know, when you've grown up in a home where you've had this threat through your life. And so there's so many layers here that are important to recognize at an individual level, but also the helpers that we have a responsibility to be educated and to help our clients, the people that we walk with, to carry this a little bit better by understanding that it's not made up and that it's really real, and that feeling is comes from somewhere that is really valid.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the other things that comes to mind for me as you name all of these things is that also a responsibility that I have as a clinical psychologist is also to disrupt this within psychology, right? So the advocacy piece that also goes back to being part of a board of psychology, whether it's the national one, the local, right? All of these different organizations that uphold the ethics and all of the things that tell us how we should show up in the therapy room. Then I also have a responsibility to say, actually, no, let's not do it that way, right? And we are the political is kind of personal, and we have to do something about it. So that's another piece that for me has been really important, is in showing up to the meetings and being like, while my voice shakes and oftentimes saying like, let me figure out who's my ally in this room so that we can say, that's not okay. We can't do that to our people. And the way that these bigger systems are also continuously upholding the very same systems that tell us like you matter in some ways, right? Psychology prides itself in saying like we're all about equity, we're all about X, Y, and Z. When the reality is that when it comes to applying some of these things, they don't uphold equity and inclusion.
When
Not
push
at
comes
all.
to shove, it doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
Man, what a powerful conversation. I'm sure we could keep going for a couple more hours. But for this episode, as we begin to wrap up, I always love hearing from my guests. And so I invite you to think about, what do you think your inner niña, la niña que se ha convertido en Doctora Rodriguez, what do you think she would be most amazed to see about your life nowadays?
So many things. I have been reflecting on this a lot, Adri. I wrote a letter recently to myself, to my younger self, because I feel so proud of, I think she would be proud of me being able to use my voice authentically. To me, one of the biggest messages that I received growing up, again, is that you have to be invisible to be safe. You have to be invisible. Haz todo lo que puedas to like, que no aparezcas, right? Like be in the room, but make sure that you're not here, that you, that's your safety. And now being able to voice things that I would have never thought I would be able to voice, that little girl who understood that her voice wasn't valued, that her voice didn't matter. Now it's like mi voz es mi mejor herramienta, to be quite honest. And not just like as, again, literally being able to speak, making myself visible and saying, because I know that other people deserve to hear you're not alone in this, right? So her hearing that, no, even like a 12-year-old me, right? Like toda asustada, like nervous, not wanting to say a word, not wanting to like literally like se sentía como que un terror grandísimo, that now it's like, I mean, we learn to make ourselves comfortable a little bit. You know, like we learn to be okay and navigate this in a different way. And your voice that you knew, que a veces you would challenge things, you took that up a notch because you need to, and you are imperfect, and that's okay. You get to be messy. You get to fuck up and be like, all right, okay, Nancy, you fucked up. Okay, let's figure out how to come back from that in a way that's intentional and caring, but without that holding me back as much.
I know that version of you is really proud to see this.
Thank you.
We're very proud to see you. I know I am. I when I see you, when I see all the other Latinas or other friends that are doing this like amazing work, it's just like, how can we feel anything less than proud? And it sucked and it was hard and it took a lot of tears and a lot of things and ups and downs to get here. But what a beautiful place to be able to have arrived to y lo que viene. Porque igual yo, like, I always think about, like, the type of therapist that we're going to be when we're like 70, like all the wisdom we're going to have, how cool we're going to be. I look forward to gaining even more knowledge and to gaining more community. And so I'm really appreciative that you shared your voice with us today. And to close us off, what is your Tia legacy? Because Tías y Amiguis, our purpose is to bring, the tias that have made it, survived it, and are telling us like what it took. And so what is the tia legacy? What is the message that you're leaving for the next generation of psychologists or for your own nieces and nephews and the people that are coming in the steps after us?
Yeah. Oof. If there's anything I can leave this world and my nieces and my nephews, and not just like my biological nieces and nephews, I mean that in the bigger scheme, is that your voice matters. That I hope people can really kind of internalize that and understand that however you choose to use that you as a human being are worthy, right? That you get to be creative, that you get to be messy, that you get to show up, and that's okay. That's part of it. Enjoying life is part of it, right? So I hope that people around me can really kind of internalize that and live fully, y ando y cantando, because I love those things as well, right? I always have to be from a place of producing, from surviving, that I hope we really continue to thrive in a way that is como que ni me lo puedo imaginar ahorita, like in ways that will be kind of amazing, that we can continue to amaze ourselves. And there's the quote that I absolutely love of your ancestors' wildest dreams. So, que eso, right? Step into that, however it is.
And the wildest dream is not always grind.
Yes.
I think that's also what you're talking about, is joy, is dancing, is community, is living and enjoying.
Exactly.
What beautiful medicine you're carrying, the medicine that has helped you and the medicine that you're giving others. What an honor to have you here. And so we hope that you enjoyed this interview. And Doctora Nancy, gracias por venir aquí Entre Tías y Amiguis. Until next time.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your tías and amiguis. Your support helps us reach more people and continue these important conversations. And don't forget to follow us on social media and stay connected. Until next time, remember to take care of yourself, embrace your journey, and keep living life with heart, vision, and creativity.